Hi, everyone. I'm excited to have Viridiana, who I call Viri Carrizales. She's the co founder and CEO of ImmSchools. It is an immigrant led nonprofit that seeks to close the gap between immigration and education by working with schools to create safe and welcoming classrooms for immigrant and undocumented students. Viri, she was born in Michoacan, Mexico, and she immigrated with her family to the US when she was 11. She's actually formerly undocumented. And after 14 years, she became a US citizen in 2016, and she lives with her family in San Antonio, Texas. Vidi, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Analiza. Excited to be in this space with you.
Vidi, so I had the pleasure of hearing your story and how incredible it was at such a young age you made the trek literally to the US. And so, would you mind sharing what that was like for you at that age, even with the calls? I mean, it was just an incredible story.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Thank you for creating this space where I can uplift that story. I will say that for the longest time, when I was living and being undocumented in this country, I used to feel a lot of shamed around my story. I would often not talk about it because I felt that people would judge me for being undocumented, for being an immigrant. So over the last few years, I've gained so much power and strength by every time that I've been asked to share my story. So that's how I'm showing up in this conversation. So to share sort of where all it started, I was born in Mexico in this very small rural town in central Mexico in the state of Michoacan. And, really recalling my childhood in those early years, I remember a lot of joy, a lot of happiness, a lot of us living and running through cornfields. And while I know and now, understand how poor we lived, that idea of not having something never crossed my mind. I would have never used the words poor to identify my childhood. Well, I know that that was a reality. That is not in my core memory. So, when I was in sixth grade, and I'm one of four daughters from my parents, and all of the four of us have always been so driven by education. We always had all these dreams of doing all these things in our lives, and my father was always very supportive of us and achieving our dreams. And he realized, given where we were living in Mexico, that there was no opportunities for us to really do much. I didn't have any role models, any examples of anything other than being a housewife or staying home, working in the fields, working in, traveling far to work in manufacturing jobs. Like I didn't see anything beyond that growing up in Mexico. So my father did see more and wanted more for us. So I remember in sixth grade having a conversation where, my parents told us that my dad was going to make the trip north, and we had uncles and family members that lived already in the US. And my dad was going to go there to be able to bring additional financial resources to help us. The plan was always for us to join him, but that wasn't communicated to us in sixth grade, when I was in sixth grade. So that was really a really difficult moment when my dad had to leave, and I didn't get to see him for close to a year. I remember those like 10 months as just like a time where we will be afraid, scared, didn't know, really like what was happening. So that was very difficult. And then in August of 1999, 10 months after my dad had made the trip to the US, my mom told us that we were also going to be making this trip north, and we were going to be reuniting with my father. And I just remember being so excited because I hadn't seen him, and I, will watch TV and movies and see, I thought the US was just like this place where everybody lived in mansions. I thought my dad was living in a mansion, driving like new cars, and I just thought it was this magical place. And so I remember feeling so much excitement, like, yes, we're going to the US. What? Like, this is exciting. I'm gonna see my dad and family members I've never met, speak English. Like, I just remember fantasizing over all of those possibilities. So, we actually packed a few clothes, changes of clothes in a plastic bag. I remember giving away all of my things that I own, including my guitar, including, clothes and things that I had that were mine, and just taking a bus to the border. We got to the border and to the station, to a bus station. Then we got into a car and we got into a motel room where there was all these people there. And in the meantime, I had no idea. I wasn't too aware what was happening, but I do remember not feeling fear because I was holding my mom's hand and she was guiding me. And it was my sister who was 9 years old and myself, with her making this trip. And so she shielded us in a way. I don't know if it was her holding my hand, but I just remember, experiencing these things, not feeling fear, which I'm so grateful for her as a mother and what she did to protect us, because that could have been very traumatizing. But yeah, I remember being in a motel room with so many people and her washing her clothes in the sink, and and then in the early hours in the morning, somebody coming to the room saying, okay, we're taking the first group, and this man saying, okay, great, I'm glad that there's kids here because we always make it across when there's kids, so we're going to take y'all first. And that he was referring to my sister and I. So we were part of the first group. We started walking. Again, I just thought in my mind that this is how everybody makes it to the US. Never crossed my mind that there was a different way. So we started walking. We walked for a very long time. I remember that the person who was guiding us across the border, and this is we were crossing through the Arizona desert in August. So this was like deep in the summer. And I remember the person who was guiding us telling us that, there was going to be some like gang members who were going to try to assault us, that we should be ready for that, and should have some money, something that we could give. And he said, the way that you will know they're coming is by this whistle. And he shared the whistle with us. He's like, when you hear the whistle, know that that's them coming. And so we were walking through the desert. We hear the whistle and people became afraid and started running, including ourselves. So we were at some point hiding in a bush in the desert, like not letting other people see us. Nobody came after that whistle. Like they were whistling for a while and then nothing happened. So then we started kind of try to reunite with the group. And we walked for a little bit by ourselves without anybody around us. And so glad that we were able to find other people, because that I did not know this back then, but that could have been the end of our life. Like we could have been lost in the desert and die like millions of people do when they try to cross the border. And we got reunited. We continued to make our journey. We got to this house, and we were told to get in a car. And I was hiding in the front seat and by my mother's like feet, just staying down, and we made that trip to Phoenix, Arizona, and got there. It was morning time. We had some relatives that live in Arizona who came to pick us up, and that next day they took us to Foot Locker to get some shoes, and I was like I'm in the US, like this is beautiful. What? Not really comprehending that whole journey, just knowing like we're here, we made it. Like, I'm with family. We took a plane. This is before 2001. So we were able to get on a plane without an ID and go to Dallas, where my dad lived. We got there, and I remember the shock in my face when I realized that he was living in a duplex with so many other family members, and that he wasn't driving a nice car, and that we did not live in a mansion. So yeah, I just remember being so shocked by that. And we got enrolled. I got enrolled in 7th grade. To a school that was a few blocks from where my dad lived, and this is me coming here, to the U.S., not fully realizing that this was going to change my life forever. I'm extremely grateful, especially to my mother, because it was her courage that took us, and her strength that took us and protected us, and make sure that we had the opportunity to access something different, something else, something that we are deserving of, that we could not access in Mexico. So I'm forever grateful for her. And now as a mother, I'm like, the love that my mother had to make that journey for us is something that I'm like, that's the level of love that mothers can only give. And that's how much I love my daughter. And I'm like, if you were to ask me to do something that will make sure that my daughter will have like all that she deserves, without a doubt, I'm going to do it. And that's exactly like what my mother did to, in making that journey here. So that's how I got here, Analiza, back in 1999, and a journey that I'm deeply grateful for.
Viri, the story is so inspiring, especially as an 11-year-old, and you're trusting your mother, and you're wandering this desert in the dark without anyone, and that there was a real possibility that you could have died because others do.
Yes.
And somehow you make it through, and you're able to see your father be reunited, and you go to school. And yet, I just want to highlight that even with this desire to make education a priority, be able to give back to economy, right? Because they tax jobs. That wasn't possible yet. Like there was more hurdles. And can you share about that?
Yes, the journey wasn't enough. Wasn't that the one thing, the solution that was going to make this possible. And I didn't learn about this until I was in 12th grade, and as a senior in high school, when it was the time for me to apply for college. I was sitting with my counselors in my counselor's office, and he said, you need to write your social security number in this college application. So I went back home, and and I kind of knew this. I knew I was undocumented, but I had no idea what that meant, never asked questions. And so my parents confirmed something they already knew, like I didn't have that number. So I told that to my high school counselor, and he said, no, that's impossible. Everybody has a social security number. Viri, I want you to, I was a top student. I was doing all these things, right, to position myself to be a strong candidate for college. And this counselor had every intention to support me. And he wanted me to go to college, and he saw that potential in me. So he refused to accept that I didn't have a social security number. And he said, no, we're going to do something about it. Let me see what I can do to try to get you this number that you need. So he, in his mind, and in the ignorance that he had, he thought that calling immigration, that maybe he could find out how I could get a social security number. So he called immigration when I was sitting in his office, and he put me on the phone with an immigration official who was asking me questions like, when did you come here? Why don't you have a social security number? What do your parents do? And maybe this instinct, I'm not sure, my ancestors telling me something, but I just feel like, no, something's not right. So I told them, look, I don't have this information. I can ask my parents, I'll come back, tell my counselor all these things. And I told my counselor, yeah, I'll go home and I'll tell my parents, and I never went back. And I remember feeling so heartbroken and angry because I felt like I was being fed a lie, that if I worked so hard in school, that if I get good grades, if I become, a president of student council, if I did all these things, I could get a chance to go to college. I could pursue my dreams that we risk our lives to achieve. And I was being told that no, like none of that could matter. None of that could be true. I needed this 9-digit number and I did not have it. So after I think it was like 2-3 months of me feeling like, what's the point? Like, what am I going to do? I cannot do anything. I am so grateful that I was surrounded by people and mentors who, there's one mentor specifically who told me, what are you going to do about it, Viri? What are you going to do about it? And I was like, oh, you dare me? You dare me? Of course I want to do something about it. I'm not going to just stay here and like take this on. And I just remember that question being so critical and igniting something in me. And I reached out to a newspaper in Dallas and I said, look, this is my story. I want to go to college. And they said, okay, we'll do a story on you. And they put it in the front page. It was a Spanish newspaper. On the front page, there's 2 young sisters seeking opportunities to go to college, but they can't because they're undocumented, like headline there are pictures holding a book. And that was published. And my email address was there. And this person from a university here in Texas reached out to me and said, hey, I'm an undocumented student in college. You can go to college. Here's how. Here's the law. Here's the process. Here's what to do. And this random person that got to read my story in this newspaper was, and it is the reason why I'm even here and why I even have a college education. Not an educator, not my high school counselor, not anyone that was meant to support me and to guide me and to give me information that I needed to succeed. A random student that I'm so grateful for at this university that somehow read my story in the newspaper. So I go to college. The university is like, no, you need a visa to come here. You need all these things. So this student told me the law and what was happening. So I was in the admissions office at the university here in actually in San Antonio. And when the university didn't know what to do with me, I actually called the Texas Capitol in the office of the senator who introduced this law. And I talked to their staff and I said, I'm here at this university. They are saying that I cannot enter the university without being considered an international student and without paying international fees and tuition. I know that is not what the law says. And their office called the admissions office. They changed my status. They let me be in college and receive state financial aid. While I was in college, this was in 2000, from 2005 to 2011. And there was a lot of immigration conversations happening during that time period, conversations around the Minutemen, folks in the border shooting, feeling like they could just shoot any immigrants coming into. So there was, conversations around immigration happening around that time. I had several classmates who will tell me, I'm going to call immigration on you, when I was in college, and always, having this feeling of this could be my last day, and also me doing anything I could, knowing that I had this opportunity at least to get an education, to complete and achieve that one dream that we've had. And I persisted. I graduated from college in 2009. I was still undocumented, which meant that even with a college degree, I could not legally work. So I was babysitting, I was working in restaurants, I was working in all types of jobs, coming up with all types of stories when people will say, well, you went to the University of Texas at Austin, you graduated, you have 2 degrees. Why are you babysitting? Why are you a waitress? And I would just come up with random things like, I just love kids so much. I want to just babysit. I don't know what I want to do with my life. I'm just, waitressing right now to get, I would just come up with all these random stories because I couldn't tell them that I couldn't legally work and I couldn't like use my degree and this knowledge that I acquired to contribute back to, that I have bigger dreams than taking care of other people's children, and that I couldn't. So I actually went through a period of, after I graduated from college, of being very depressed. I was actually in a facility because like I just didn't know like how to overcome that. And especially because this whole time I'm thinking, wow, we crossed the border to and walked through the desert to be here, and now like it didn't matter how hard I tried. That was such a barrier that I couldn't get past, and I just feel like, how can I like get back and honor the sacrifices that my parents made, that my mother made to come here, and I can't realize those dreams. I can't be who like I'm dreaming to be because I'm still undocumented. So it was really difficult for me to be in that position. I was able to adjust my status through my now husband 3 years later, 3 years after graduating college. And my first job, I remember when I got my social security number, which by the way, if you still ask me what's your social security number, like I still don't know. Somehow my mind is like, this number, I didn't have you for so long. I almost have it framed somewhere because I'm like, I didn't live without you for a long time. But I remember I was waiting for my social security number to come in the mail, and I was searching like, this is my moment to actually like, what do I want to be? Like I was giving permission to dream beyond surviving. And I realized, you know what, education was the one thing that made things possible for me. Education was the one thing that let me see the power that I had, and that I was much more than my immigration status. So I wanted to be back and do something in education. I felt that it was so unjust what I experienced as a student, especially not getting the support from educators that I deserved and needed. So yeah, that I applied to work in jobs in nonprofits that were directly working in education and directly supporting students and families, and that gave me the opportunity to bring in and uplift my own lived experience as a formerly undocumented student, and help especially teachers and folks within the education sector, education practitioners, to acknowledge and understand that there's so many students like myself in their classrooms in our schools, that need their support, and how sometimes our best intentions could jeopardize and really be harmful for our students if we don't fully understand the context and the stories of the students that are in our classroom. So that was my formal introduction into the education sector, and my first sort of opportunity to do something that allowed me to utilize my skills and my knowledge. So that I feel like I started my journey into my professional career a little bit later, but it happened when it needed to happen. And I'm so grateful and proud that, that I took on that lead, and that I recognized that was something that I wanted to do.
Viri, the story from your hometown in Mexico, holding your mom's hand through the desert, finding out you could go to school, but not to college, having to try to have that 9-digit number so that you could have an opportunity. All of it was that not just for your dreams, right? But it was actually to give back. And
Yes.
it's incredible that as much as you were so altruistic, that the system, because you didn't have those 9 digits, was like, no, we'll not have you serve the people, right? And I'm so grateful that you're doing this work, and it must mean so much to the people that you lead and serve to have you know from your community what that experience is like. so much empathy and love. So thank you
Thank
for that
you.
work, Vidi. And I want to ask you, I mean, it is a tough climate, right? It's always been tough, but like
Yes.
nowadays it is a whole other level. And I'm curious with DACA and your work, where yeah, give us an assessment. You know, here it's always right, it's always a life cycle, but I'm curious, are we nearing some happy news? Where are you
Mm-hmm.
finding some hope, or is it just slow
Mm-hmm.
going? But I'd love for you to assess, because you're an expert in the field. How is it going with particularly the people in which you serve and getting, actually official status?
Yes, something you said it so well. This is nothing new, right? The challenges, the anti-immigrant rhetoric, the policies that are not supporting our immigrant community, especially immigrants of color, immigrants coming from particular countries, is nothing new. In fact, is how immigration was created in this country on the basis of race and where people are located, how people look. So that's been the history of this country. I feel this past decade has brought up to light a lot of this injustices and issues that have always persisted in our immigrant communities. And what's happening, I remember back in college and when the DREAM Act was first came up for a vote in 2007 and then 2010. And I remember sitting in the dorm and, in college, like, yay, nay, how many votes? How many votes do we need? And just witnessing this strangers, these legislators, like vote on me. They had no idea who it was. And yeah, I was literally counting in a notebook. Okay, yes, no. Oh man, we're short 9 votes. Go on, pack my bags, go on to this next thing. Like I knew this whole time I was conditioned to, okay, what's happening in immigration? Life goes on. Like I could not let it be the one thing that was like, that could define me. And I in a way became conditioned to expecting bad news and things not to progress, things not to change. So I have those like core memories of, always this ongoing and somehow feeling like you cannot stop the wave of just bad news and this idea of feeling like hopeless is so real, which I think also contributed to like me like falling into deep depression, because you are not seeing any type of light, any type of good news. This is 2007, right? Like years and years and years of sometimes getting so close, but not enough, that I have been conditioned to be always cautiously optimistic. I'm approaching anything regarding immigration with this like pessimistic way, because nothing has changed, and the way that we are going, it will not change. And one of the biggest things that I hope people learn is that often they associate immigration policy, especially anti-immigration policy, with specific political party. And what I want people to know is that it does not matter, and it has not mattered who's in office. There's always anti-immigrant policies against us. And the fact that going from one to other like might mean something for people, it does not mean anything, absolutely anything to us. So, it's often hard to find hope when you know that like you have not seen good change happen from who's in office. But one of the biggest things that every time I have conversations with families, especially immigrant women, and it's something that I shared with them, is that joy is something that nobody will ever take away from us. Maybe hope, maybe all these things, but not joy. And we will still smile and we will still show up and we will do our things, because that's what we do as immigrants, right? Like we make things happen sometimes out of nothing. We make things happen and we continue to make it happen and to thrive. Like we get to define that, and joy is such a key component that like we cannot let anybody take. So right now, like it's looming. Like there's nothing right now that is in the works that could change the realities of the millions of undocumented immigrants in this country. There's not such a line, there's not such an application that people can apply to adjust their status. There's millions of undocumented students who are graduating schools, who are going to college, who are graduating college, who are undocumented, because since 2015, no, yes, 2015, no, 2017, there has been no new people that could apply for DACA. So right now you're talking about people in 2017 who are like older, who are adults, like in their 30s. Like you're not talking about younger students who are graduating from high school who are in college right now. So, just like I found myself graduating college with not a degree and not feeling like I could contribute back, we have so many undocumented students across the country who are in that position, who have engineering degrees, who have, teaching degrees, who have all these things, and yet they cannot give back because there's not a pathway for them to adjust their status. And with elections coming up in 2024, we know that immigration will continue to be a tool, a weapon for these conversations on presidential elections. So we are getting ready for what that is going to look like, because regardless of what happens, every time that you make it okay to dehumanize immigrants and people start absorbing that narrative and start internalizing it, the first place that we see that come out is in our schools, is in our students and the trauma that they're getting. So that is why I'm doing this work with ImmSchools to change that, because policies, it will probably be a long time for change to happen. Like there's so many, including myself, who worked in this, and I'm tired. I am so tired. I don't even watch the news anymore, and I don't want to learn about immigration because I'm exhausted. My sister, who is 2.5 years older than me, is undocumented. And I worry for her because she drives, her kids to school every day. She goes to work, and she could be deported at any time. Like this still impacts me and my family. I myself, I'm now a US citizen, but my sister is not. And like this is still part of my family. And so even if I want to find the time to escape and not think about policy, like I have no choice, because my sister's future depend on that. And it is always this sort of balance of feeling some sort of, like I want to feel like an escape where I don't want to think about it. I don't want to be reminded about it. But I cannot, because like my family's future and survival depends on it. So yeah.
Vidi, when you shared all that and how even in this work and trying to help others, it's also people in your family. So no matter not looking at the news, there is real worry that your sister could be deported.
Yes.
And there's not a lot, and you and I are both, I think, positive people by nature. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot to hang our hat on with getting other ways in which undocumented people can have pathways to contribute. Yeah. Yet, let me ask you this question. Mm-hmm. What is there anything that we can do? Or is it just really a political battle? What are your thoughts?
There's so much. I remember the first time I made my trip to Washington, D.C., I was still undocumented. And I was out there telling my story. And I did not see anybody else but undocumented youth who had everything to lose out there telling our stories, because we knew nobody else were going to tell our stories. Mm-hmm. And I wish a teacher, an educator, I wish like folks who knew us could be out there also helping and sharing that narrative. There's so much so much that we can do, because honestly, I feel like a big factor in us being in this situation where this anti-immigrant narrative continues to just, to just continues, is because there's also a lot of people who just don't know, nor have they've had an opportunity to actually meet someone who is undocumented, and all that they're hearing is what they're absorbing through the media, which is often just very one-sided. So we all have the opportunity, like, share a story about like the real people. They're CEOs who are formerly undocumented. There are engineers. There's all these beautiful people, beautiful mothers who should not be dehumanized because they don't have a social security number, who this country absolutely needs to thrive. And so there's something that we can do. Like, if you are a US citizen, you can vote, something that I could not do. I depended on people who were US citizens to vote because I couldn't. My sister cannot vote. So now I vote for her. So there's so much that we can do, to starting with voting, and to also educate ourselves, especially when it comes to the issue of immigration. Because even right now, like, I'm in Texas, and right now, like, we're putting these things that are killing people, they're killing children. And if we are okay with letting that happen, I hope that we don't lose our sense of humanity, because it is not right. I don't care what you believe. It is not right to kill people who are coming to this country to kill children. And if that does not outrage people, I don't know what will. So there's always something that everybody can do to make sure that we are creating this narrative of around humanity and the dignity that immigrants deserve. Because these are immigrants like my mother, who wanted the best for her kids. Everybody, it's our human nature, right? Especially as parents, especially as mothers, to do anything to protect our kids, and to do anything to make sure that they are always better off than we are. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason why people making the trip to this country. And hope that people always, especially mothers, especially parents, ask themselves, like, what will you do for your kids? How far will you go for your kids? And that is how far these people are going for their own kids. So I think if we put ourselves in that position and think ourselves in that way, it changes things for us. And I hope that that's true for people who may listen to this.
Viri, I want to stamp those, what can we do, that there's plenty. The first is to stand with, and particularly stand with and listen and share stories.
Yes.
Particularly of the very, very many who are CEOs and engineers and who are contributing to our society. Mm-hmm. I also hear that the importance of voting, that we are able to, since we do have Social Security, don't not let that important right go. The third is educating ourselves. And I know there's a lot of media out there, but actually learning about, what these contributions, what the laws are, just being able to push past all the hate media to real truth. And the last is empathy, that when we ask ourselves, even if you're not a parent, like, what would you do for someone you loved? What hill would you climb? What desert would you walk through? And you would walk. And having that empathy allows us to say, and me too. Had it been me, I would absolutely do the same. So I so appreciate that, because even with not a lot of hope for legislation to have pathways for others undocumented to be able to contribute, we can still act. Yes. Find some hope. And Viri, I just want to appreciate so much telling that story. It is an incredibly emotional story, and it's just so beautiful. And I thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Viri, we're going to lighten it up and ask some light questions.
Yes, I am ready.
Okay. Chocolate or vanilla?
Vanilla.
Cooking or takeout?
Takeout 100%. I'm a busy woman. Cannot cook. Takeout.
Climb a mountain or jump from a plane?
Is neither an option? If I have to choose, I will say climbing a mountain
Have you ever worn socks with sandals?
all the time.
How would you rate your karaoke skills? 1 to 10, 10 being Mariah Carey.
Look, I think I'm a 7, but everybody else will probably rank me in the probably a 3.
What's a recent book you read?
um, this book called Barefoot, by Petra Luna, and it's this journey of immigrant family coming to the U.S.
What is a favorite practice for self-care for you?
I have been going to get massages once a week for at least 90 minutes, and that has given me the biggest gift. It had been since 2019 since I've gotten a massage. And 2 months ago, I've been going once a week, and that's been the greatest gift I could give myself, especially my body. I've been hydrating so much and going to this like sauna to just not do just to meditate and just be there with my thoughts. That's what I'm giving. I also I like to do artistic stuff. I feel like in my past life I was probably an artist. So I have this, I like to doodle. I like every time I'm feeling something, I'm just taking some time to paint or do something with my hands to remind me of this creativity and this power that I have. And I realize that that tends to center me. So those are some wellness things that I'm doing.
What's a good professional development you've done?
Ooh, nothing comes to mind. Although I will say I've been working with a coach that has changed my life, and giving myself that opportunity to make that part of my own leadership journey has been incredible. And this is a woman of color who just holds a mirror to me. And so I don't know if that's PD or not, but that's been transformational for me.
What's your definition of a boss mama?
Mm, mm. I would say that's her superpower. Being a boss and being a mother is a superpower. I started the same year I started ImmSchools. I became pregnant and I gave birth. So I had 2 babies at once. And while it was not planned, I'm so glad that it happened and thank my ancestors for making it happen, because I have all these additional powers and strengths and, super things that are possible because I'm a parent. And so I just feel they're just, yeah, this extra powers that I have for being able to be a boss and a mother.
Viri, what advice would you give your younger self?
To believe um, that I already have everything within myself to make it happen. I will say believe. Yeah.
And then where can we find you, like LinkedIn or any other social media?
Google me out there. Yes, you can find me in all social media platforms. You can find ImmSchools, which is an organization that I lead, at ImmSchools in all social media platforms except TikTok, and we're still making our way in other ones. But and then for me, it's either at Viri Carrizales or at Viri Tule, Tule. And you can find me also in social media or out there in the world.
And last question, do you have a final ask, recommendation, or any parting thoughts to share?
Yes, I will say, and I think this is connected to your question around boss mom. I have 2 young kids, 2 young children, and it's so challenging. It's so challenging to be a parent, to show up in the way that you feel they deserve to show up, and to also be a CEO and to be a leader. And, one of the things that I've been reminding myself, and this is what I hope to share with others, especially like boss moms out there, is to, give yourself that space to be more than a boss and a mom. To not feel guilty for the times that you want to go get a massage, for the times that you want to do things for you. Like, because I was living my life of CEO, and then after, when I'm not a CEO, I'm a mom. But I'm like, no, there's also Viri in there. I still have all these other things. And I used to feel very guilty. And I think this is also maybe being a person of color, a woman of color, right? You feel guilty when you're not giving to others. When you're doing something for yourself, you're like, how dare I'm doing something for myself? So my whole thing is like, I've been lately saying, screw that. I'm gonna squeezing time and prioritize time for me as a woman, for me as a person. That does not mean that I'm less of a boss, less of a mom, but I deserve that too. I deserve my me time. So that is my wish and hope for others out there, that we can be all of that. And we're enough. We are enough, right? I have not cooked a meal and I don't even know how long. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm enough. I show up in other ways for my kids, and I'm grateful for that. So that's my advice, to give ourselves some grace, to be human too.
Love it. Viri, thank you so much for all these beautiful stories. So inspiring and touching.
Thank you, Analiza. Thank you for creating this space. Like I said, I'm coming from years of feeling like my story was feeling tons of shame and embarrassment, to feeling lots of power. So even going through this, every time I get to share my story, it's like this light within me keeps shining brighter, and it's a reminder, and it's a way for me to touch and feel my power. So thank you for gifting me that by sharing my story today.